people ask me when they find out I work with sharks is, aren't you scared? And the honest answer is sometimes, but not for the reasons you might think, because nothing I'm about to tell you today is going to make sharks harmless. They have teeth, they are predators, and they are very powerful. But the story we tell about them, the one that allows fear to become justification, that story is far more dangerous. There are few creatures on Earth that we feel justified killing simply because they exist. Sharks. When I was a kid, I was terrified of sharks. Not mildly afraid, terrified. I had believed everything I had been taught to believe, that sharks are villains, they're monsters, that they're out to get us. But then at the age of 16, I went diving with sharks for the first time, and bull sharks. Not a small species, not a harmless species. Bull sharks are considered one of the most dangerous sharks in our ocean. In South Africa, we have approximately 100 different species in our waters. So in hindsight, this was a bold choice, considering we have approximately 97 other less bitey options that I could have chosen from. But this moment was life-changing for me. Being in the water, coming face to face with an animal that I had taught my whole life to fear, I didn't feel fearless in that moment, but I was curious, and that curiosity changed the direction of my life. When we think of sharks, well, firstly, what I didn't know back then, and what many people still don't know today, is we have approximately 500 different species of sharks found worldwide. But when we think of sharks, we don't think of the 500 species, we think of one. The white shark. Filmed, replayed, sensationalized, one image, one narrative, one fear. This one story has come to stand in for an entire group of animals. When a narrative just shows one animal, complexity can become lost. So we don't see them for the diversity that exists, and when this complexity is lost, you also lose understanding, and in that way it becomes easier to justify doing harm. After that first dive with the bull sharks, I needed to understand sharks better. So I went back to high school, somewhere right in the middle of high school, in fact, and I changed my subjects from business studies to biology, which meant leaning into the subjects that I was really, really bad at. But I chose learning over assumption. And the more I learned, fear turned to fascination, and confusion turned to clarity. And also with that came a growing desire to protect. I began to see sharks for what they really are: specialized, diverse, essential to the health of our oceans. As a South African, the more I learned, the more I became filled with pride, learning that our country is a top 5 global biodiversity hotspot for sharks. And we are home to many endemic species that are found nowhere else on Earth. And now, nearly 20 years later, after spending many, many hours in the water and studying various species, one thing has become even more clear to me, and that's their vulnerability. So now, as a marine biologist and a shark ecologist, my sense of responsibility did not come with a qualification. It came that moment at 16, suspended in the water, staring into the eyes of a bull shark, a moment that dismantled everything that I thought I knew about an animal. That moment changed the entire direction of my life. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about sharks in general. They are ancient. So these are animals that have evolved for over 450 million years ago. So they were there before trees. They're older than trees. They're older than the dinosaurs. And they continue to exist long after the dinosaurs went extinct. They've survived 5 mass extinctions. They are critical, play a very critical role in the functioning of our oceans. They influence prey behaviors, population structure, and the food web dynamics that keep our oceans healthy. However, like any superhero, they have their kryptonite, and there are some life history characteristics that make them extremely vulnerable to exploitation. They take a very long time to grow. They take a long time to reach maturity. And if they do get to the age where they're able to reproduce, it can happen very slowly and they have very few young, relatively speaking. So this means that if their populations become depleted, recovery is very, very slow. So sharks and their close relatives, the rays, today are the second most endangered group of species on this planet, second to amphibians, frogs and such. And approximately 1/3 of all these species globally are considered threatened with extinction. Climate change, plastic pollution, habitat destruction all play a role, but the real threat that they're facing, the biggest threat they are facing, is overfishing. Overfishing can be where they caught as bycatch, which is unintentional catch, and they're often wastefully discarded, not even used. But they're also targeted for food, for trade, for sport, and sometimes under the idea that they're protecting people. So demand plays a role, so does fear. But this is where perspective matters. Approximately 10 people are killed by sharks every year worldwide. But approximately 70 to 100 million sharks are killed by humans every year. Sharks are being removed faster than they can recover. And this consequence extends far beyond the animals themselves. The ocean, which we rely on as a source of food, for livelihoods, for climate regulation, for our recreation, and as a producer of much of the oxygen in the air we breathe, this life-giving body can only continue to support us if the forces that keep it healthy remain intact. Sharks are one of those forces. They may not be easy to love, but they are becoming very easy to lose. So sharks have survived 5 mass extinctions. They've survived everything this planet has thrown at them. So the question now is, are they going to survive us? So a few weeks ago, I decided to get back into the water and see the bull sharks again. This is something I haven't done in over 20 years. Being back in the water with them, coming face to face once again, the last time I'd done that, I was at the very beginning of this path. Now I find myself right in the middle of it. And the truth is, working conservation can be really, really disheartening and emotionally exhausting. Much of the work I do now no longer involves me being in the water, but instead I spend time in meetings with government, trying to work to change outdated legislation to better protect our natural world, fighting fisheries, whether it's illegal fisheries, unsustainable fisheries, destructive fisheries, working with prosecutors to better prosecute wildlife crime. Basically a lot of meetings with people and less time in the water with the animals. And it turns out that swimming with the sharks is actually the easiest and the least scary part of my job. But the real meaningful on-the-ground conservation work can really wear you down. You sometimes wonder if what you're fighting for, what you're doing is even making a difference. Whether the small groups of people fighting for conservation could ever stand up to the massive, massive beasts driving exploitation. And when it gets really heavy for me, I put myself back in the water with animals because I need to remind myself why I chose this path. And seeing those bull sharks again, coming face to face, feeling that connection that I did on that very first dive, that reminded me why I do what I do. And now, today, I feel less scared of sharks and more scared for them. But I'm reminded of their vulnerability, their beauty, their importance, and my responsibility. So what have sharks taught me about responsibility? Responsibility isn't always assigned. It isn't always inherited. Sometimes it's something that's claimed. It's when you choose to notice something that other people refuse to see. It's when you choose to keep showing up, even when the outcome is uncertain, even when the work you do is uncomfortable, and even when it breaks your heart, even when the thing you're trying to protect is scary and isn't widely loved or understood. My sense of responsibility didn't make me fearless. It made me refuse to let fear, fatigue, and convenience be the reason that I did nothing. So responsibility doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't mean swimming with sharks or becoming a marine biologist for most of us, but it can sometimes be as simple as just being aware of the choices we're already making. So in the case of sharks, one of the best things we can do to help them is to just be more informed or make more informed decisions of the seafood we choose to eat. Choosing sustainably sourced seafood can help to reduce bycatch, it can lessen the pressure on vulnerable species, and it can support fisheries that value long-term ocean health over short-term economic gain. At the end of the day, it's not about trying to save everything. It's about simply asking one more question than you did before. Where did this fish come from? And what did it cost to be on my plate? And I don't mean financially. So just to wrap up, the first encounter I had in the water with bull sharks, it showed me that they weren't the villains that I thought I was meant to fear, but that they were victims of misunderstanding. That moment didn't give me a plan, but it did give me clarity. Because responsibility is not always something that comes with power or that comes with ownership. Sometimes it comes noticing something that others choose not to see and feeling accountable for it. So my question to you today is, what have you come face to face with? A fear, a moment, a truth that changed what you thought you knew? Because responsibility often begins there, and it's not when you're ready, not when you're comfortable, but when understanding becomes personal. And when that understanding becomes personal, I'm getting emotional now because it's personal. But when understanding becomes personal and you decide that something matters, you can't ignore it anymore, and you can't pretend it's not yours to care about any longer. So this can also unexpectedly come with the purpose that you didn't even know that your life was missing. Thank you.